obviously makes the argument that for the poor, taxation and helping the poor is an okay thing. Taxation and helping the rich is not an okay thing. But overdoing it, effectively seizing the property rights of somebody who's earned them, that's unacceptable. I'm going to do something I wouldn't do at any other platform, which is why I love this platform. I'm going to read something to you that is so profound in my view. On March 29, 1792, Madison penned an iconic essay on rights and power in the context of property rights. I choose to provide the essay without edits to ensure that I do not diminish its understanding, impact, and importance. It is fairly concise, yet thorough. This term, in its particular application, means that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world in exclusion of every other individual. He's talking about property rights. But listen to how he explains property rights. In the former sense, a man's land or merchandise or money is called his property. In the latter sense, a man has a property in his opinions and the free communication of them. He has a property of peculiar value in his religious opinions and in the profession and practice dedicated by them. He has a property very dear to him in the safety and liberty of his person. He has an equal property in the free use of his faculties and free choice of the objects on which to employ them. In a word, as a man is said to have a right in his property, he may be equally said to have a property in his rights. Where an excess of power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his faculties, or his possessions. This is why it was so important, I think, to write this book on power. It all comes down to power, not liberty, because liberty relies on power, who exercises it and how it's exercised, not rights, but power, whether in fact you're going to be able to exercise your unalienable rights. Where there is an excess of liberty, the effect is the same, though from an opposite cause, anarchy and so forth. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, your opinion, your security, your physical land, every sort, as well as that which lies in the various rights of individuals, as that which the term particularly expresses. This being the end of government, that is the purpose of government, that alone is just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. What do you think he'd say about Mondani? What do you think he'd say about Bernie Sanders? According to this standard of merit, the praise of affording a just securing to property should be sparingly bestowed on a government which, however scrupulously guarding the possessions of the individuals, does not protect them in the enjoyment and communication of their opinions, in which they have an equal, and in the estimation of some, a more valuable property. What is he saying there? He's saying, yes, government needs to protect your private property, but nothing beyond that, because then it will intrude on your property, it'll interfere, and it'll begin the slow but certain process of controlling it. More sparingly should this praise be allowed to a government where a man's religious rights are violated by penalties or fettered by tests or taxed by a hierarchy. Conscience is the most sacred of all property. Other property depending in part on positive law. Positive law to protect the property, but your conscience is more important than anything else. To guard a man's house as his castle, to pay public and enforce private debts with the most exact faith can give no title to invade a man's conscience, which is more sacred than his castle, or to withhold from it that debt of protection for which the public faith is pledged by the very nature and original conditions of the social pact. He's going back to Locke, civil society, the social compact or contract, saying that your conscience, your soul, your belief system, you as a human being, as de Tocqueville would say later, you have a circle of liberty that surrounds you that must not be penetrated by government. That circle of liberty should be protected by government, but he's warning here, that protection shouldn't be so aggressive, so authoritarian, as to actually threaten your liberty and your personal being. This is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where the property which a man has in his personal safety and personal liberty is violated by arbitrary seizures of one class of citizens for the service of the rest. Is that not Marxism, economic socialism? A magistrate issuing his warrants to a press gang would be in his proper functions in Turkey or Indostan under appellations proverbially of the most complete despotism. So back then he's pointing to Turkey and Indostan, I guess that's Indonesia, as violations of these principles. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exemptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens that free use of their faculties and free choice of their occupations, which not only constitute their property in the general sense of the word, but are the means of acquiring property, strictly so called. What must be the spirit of legislation where a manufacturer of linen cloth is forbidden to bury his own child in a linen shroud, in order to favor his neighbor who manufactures woolen cloth, where the manufacturer and wearer of woolen cloth are again forbidden the economical use of buttons of that material, in favor of the manufacture of buttons of other materials. So he's arguing for freedom of commerce, for the right to property. In other words, for individuals to make decisions voluntarily about their property, whether it is the properties in your conscience and your soul or the properties in a button. A just society of property is not afforded by that government, under which unequal taxes oppress one species of property and reward another species, where arbitrary taxes invade the domestic sanctuaries of the rich and excessive taxes grind the faces of the poor, where the keenness and competitions of want are deemed an insufficient spur to labor, and taxes are again applied by an unfeeling policy as another spur in violation of that sacred property, which heaven, in decreeing man to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow, kindly reserved to him in the small repose that could be spared from the supply of his necessities. So I think he would object to, like, our Internal Revenue Code, which tries to manage everything through taxation, fines, and other penalties. And he obviously makes the argument that for the poor, taxation in helping the poor is an okay thing. Taxation in helping the rich is not an okay thing. But overdoing it, effectively seizing the property rights of somebody who's earned them, that's unacceptable. If there be a government then which prides itself in maintaining the inviolability of property, which provides that none shall be taken directly, even for public use, without indemnification to the owner, that's actually in the Constitution, right? If you're going to get an easement or something like that, you're supposed to be paid the fair market value. The fair market value is what the Constitution requires. And yet directly violates the property which individuals have in their opinions, their religion, their persons, and their faculties. So there's certain property you can't take. Nay more, which indirectly violates their property in their actual possessions, in the labor that acquires their daily sustenance, and in the hallowed remnant of time which ought to relieve their fatigues and soothe their cares. The influence have been anticipated that such a government is not a pattern for the United States. It's not about all property rights. If the United States mean to obtain to deserve the full praise due to wise and just governments, they will, meaning the states, they will equally respect the rights of property and the property in rights. They will revolve the government that most sacredly guards the former, and by repelling its example and violating the latter, will make themselves a pattern to that and all other governments. These are brilliant men. So I comment, thus sovereignty is in the individual and the people, not the government. Again, as mentioned earlier in the book, God is the sovereign, whose sovereignty is reflected in his children, we the people. No government is legitimate, but for the consent of the people. Therefore, representative government is imperative. It checks the rulers and serves the people through elections. Limited government is the only kind of government that can reflect and respond to the will of the people. Massive bureaucracies with hundreds of departments and agencies populated by millions of employees, making and issuing regulations, that is, laws, without input from the people, conflicts with representative government and functions without the consent of the people. Importantly, people outside the government are to be represented by people inside the government. How is this possible under these circumstances? As I asserted earlier, the government today is increasingly devouring the private sector, that is, the civil society, becoming a power unto itself. Here is the key. The founders and framers believed and understood that governments are formed to protect our natural rights. Governments are formed to protect our natural rights. In other words, our government was formed to protect our Declaration of Independence, the issues associated and proclamations associated with that.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.